Okay. First of all, anybody in here not turn their idea paper in yet?
I haven't turned mine in on Angel.
Okay, so we can look at yours now. I'll still want, well, I guess I can come on here and do it. Everybody who already submitted theirs on Angel, I've already graded them. I've looked at them already. Some of you, for all of them, you should have gotten a receipt, whether it was approved or not. So you would have gotten an email about it, well, whatever email address you use. I'm guessing it's your CUW one. But in any case, if your paper was approved, which many people's paper was approved as is, then you are to continue on to the requirements document, which is due a week from today. And I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes today. There are some people who are in the class who I've asked who are still working on their idea paper or making revisions. I asked them to take advantage of this class time, since that's definitely a time that they have available to meet with each other. So some people won't show up, and that's kind of the nice thing of a project class and why we tend to go short, but I make myself available if you have questions, is you know that you and your teammates, if you are doing a joint project, are available right now. So you have an hour and 15 minutes that you can at least babble. Okay. So in any case, if your paper was approved, you need to start working on your requirements document as soon as possible. I'll talk about that in more detail here in a second, just for a few minutes, and then we'll let out again. If your paper was not approved, what I did is I didn't give you a grade yet. I just gave you suggestions. Ultimately, the goal is everybody will get 100 on their idea paper once it's approved. That means it's a good starting point. That won't be the case for the other documents, requirements document and things like that. But in any case, I would have given you some feedback as to what I think is missing or what I need you to clarify, that kind of stuff. So if you didn't get that email, I would go ahead and log into Angel as soon as possible and see what's missing. So if you have questions and you want to ask me today, take advantage of that so I can direct you in the right direction. Otherwise, make those couple of updates to your idea paper, resubmit them. If you want, shoot me an email real quick right after you submit it, just to let me know that you submitted it. Otherwise, I'll probably be automatically looking at it this evening, but I might be able to look at it more quickly than that if you let me know that you submitted it, and then we can get that approved as soon as possible. Questions about that? Okay, so let's talk about the requirements document a little bit, kind of at the high level. Again, it is due 1 week from today, just like the idea paper was due today. So the goal of the requirements document is to unambiguously describe all of the features that your project will deliver at the end of the semester, or by the end of the semester. Keywords here being unambiguously and all. Okay, those two things are very important. Specifically when you're working with a client, your client needs to understand that this requirements gathering step is extremely important because it sets up the entire expectation of the project. Your client understands what they have asked you to deliver. And I can't even tell you how important this is, because so many technology projects go south because the client thinks they're getting one thing and they actually get something else. Okay? This requirements document is really a governing document that protects you, the developer, or the implementer, from being taken advantage of by the client. And it also protects the client so they have a clear idea of what they are going to get. So they're not taken advantage of by the developer or the implementer. Make sense? In business, often, like in my company, I often have the client sign off on that requirements document. So we prepare the document, we might go through a couple of revisions with it, and ultimately we give them a quote based on what the requirements document says that they've signed off on. Then if they come back in the middle of the project and they say, well, I really wanted to do this, we can go back and look at the requirements document to find out if this is an addition or if this was included. Now, when I say included, we rarely quote fixed pricing for things. What we do is we estimate hours something will take based on our understanding of the project. So when they come back to us, I mean, it's not impossible for them to say we want A, B, and C, and them never change that, but our quote, our estimate on how much time A, B, and C would take is not accurate. So sometimes we might say it'll take 100 hours and it actually takes 120. Just as often we say it'll take 100 hours, it actually takes 80. Because we're having to make a guess at how complex certain things are going to be that we maybe haven't done before. Okay, but the most important aspect of that is that the client understands the correct expectation. This is what they're getting, and this is about what they're paying. That make sense? Okay, for you, you don't have a set fee that you're charging somebody, but as you get more and more experienced, you will understand about how long certain things will take you to implement. That makes sense? And that'll allow you to give pretty accurate estimates. Okay? And just as a rule of thumb, if you're ever estimating the number of hours that something will take you, add about 15%. If you're a client and you agree to 115% of what it will actually cost, won't you be happy if it comes in under budget? What if you agreed to 85% of what it ends up costing? A little bit less happy, right? So, under promise, over deliver is, I guess, is the punchline. Okay, but that requirements document is very important for both you and the client because it governs what you will be delivering. That makes sense? So that's the goal. Again, important words here are unambiguously and all. So statements like the website will have sections like a page for A, a page for B, a page for C, that doesn't cut it. Sections like this and like that aren't specific. If you're doing a website, there's going to be a page for registering. That page will ask the user for a username, a password, a billing address, blah, 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 blah. These are the things that are going to be required to get from the end user. Okay? It's going to have a page for purchasing books. Books will be searchable by this, and this, keyword relevance, that kind of stuff. You need to be very specific about what those pages are going to be. That makes sense? Now, one thing to keep in mind is the difference between the requirements document and the next document you'll be putting together, which is the specifications document. Those two documents are the different side of the same coin. The requirements unambiguously describes what you will do. The specifications document is really usable by the developer or the implementer for which mostly unambiguously describes how you will fulfill the requirements of the requirements document. Make sense? Okay. Now, keep in mind in a real life situation, very often the specifications document is created by one person who then hands it to another person to actually create the project. In your case, you're the same person. Okay? So for example, my wife's a COBOL programmer. And so she writes software all the time. And her boss is a senior data analyst. He used to be a programmer, so he still thinks like a programmer, but he doesn't write a whole lot of software anymore. Now what he's a project manager who writes a whole lot of specification documents. Okay? So what my wife gets is a requirements document, this is what you're doing, and a specifications document which says this is how you're going to do it. Now, when my wife first started working there 15 years ago, something like that. She's been there a long time. He had to write very detailed specifications documents. When somebody's new and they're not used to the system and things like that, you have to spoon feed it to them, right? So when he's writing specifications documents for people who haven't been there as long or less competent programmers, this is Western Illinois University in the middle of a cornfield in Illinois, so they don't get a whole lot of computer science people. They get like grandmothers coming out of retirement who think COBOL sounds fun. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So when I moved up here, my wife kept her job there and just works remotely from the house. But in any case, the specifications document he puts together for my wife is going to be probably substantially more ambiguous than what he would put together for a fresh employee who hasn't done this stuff before, because he really needs to give them a paint by number. Where my wife has done, 1,000 projects for them, probably knows how the system works better than he does since he's been out of that world for so long, so he relies on her to do a lot. But understand that difference there, and that is he's preparing the specifications document and the requirements document. She is the recipient of those. She's using the requirements document to tell her what she is accomplishing and the specifications document to tell her how she is to accomplish it. That makes sense? You're your own audience in this case. So that's where the specifications document becomes maybe less important than the requirements document. And I don't really want to emphasize that the phrase less important, but it's critical that you capture your requirements unambiguously. That way you know what you're supposed to deliver and the client knows what they're getting. That's just absolutely critical. Since you're the one who's building it, that specifications document can be a little bit more ambiguous in that you can use that time as you're putting that together to really explore the types of technologies you want to use to fulfill this and kind of organize yourself, as opposed to feeling like you have to give a granular paint by number for accomplishing something because you're the person you're teaching. Does that kind of make sense? So understand the purpose of these documents. When I was a lot younger, I didn't have a real respect for software engineering. I've been programming since I was very young, and I always thought I was very good and I could do really complex projects just off the top of my head. But everybody has their limitation. A project gets to a point where it's too big that even the great Mike Lippman can't keep it all in his head, right? Okay? Well, I didn't have a lot of respect for this process of the requirements and the specifications document until I got burned a bunch of times by clients. Start realizing that you have a different idea of their project in your head than they do. That's where the requirements document comes in. And even that specifications document, specifically when you're working in teams, you all have to be on the same page of what technologies you're going to be using, how you're going to accomplish that. We were talking to Val's group a little bit. Well, I say we because it's really a body mass thing. So I'm like 2.5 people. So I consider myself a small group. But I was mentioning to her, she's working with two other people for her project for the chemistry department. And you really need to break that into modules. So if she's working on the first module, her input's coming from the user, her output is going to Burke's module. So he's going to expect his input coming from her output. So what they need to agree upon is what her output's going to look like so that he knows what his input will look like. Okay, so you're breaking it into pieces, and that's really where specifications comes in. That kind of makes sense? You are unambiguously defining things like that. It's still important if you're doing this yourself. So continually using Val as the example, if she were writing all 3 modules herself, when she first sits down and tries to think about the problem at a high level, she's going to say, okay, here's module A, here's module B, here's module C. Each of these modules has a purpose. So module A is going to accomplish this task, module B is this task, module C is this task. Then she can think about what all module A is going to do, and ultimately what does it produce as an output, so that she can then design that as the input to module B. And you do all that on paper before you actually start programming, and now you sort of kind of have a map you can follow as you're putting the project together, as opposed to getting 2/3 the way done with module A or module B and realize that it's no longer compatible with what your mindset was for the other one, for the other module. Does that kind of make sense? So understand that this specifications document has a purpose. It's not just busy work. Okay, and that's really what, when I first took my first software engineering class, I looked at it as busy work. Like, I liked programming. I don't like writing ER diagrams and crap like that. It seemed stupid to me. And I think doing requirements and specifications as busy work is stupid. But then you gain an appreciation for what these documents are supposed to do. Okay, so there isn't one format that's the perfect requirements document. There isn't one format that's the perfect specifications document. These documents have purposes, and it's a tool. Okay, so when you write your specifications document, I'm looking at it, I'm going to try to put myself in your shoes. If I know that I'm the person who's implementing this from a single document. I'm the only one. I'm going to look at it from the point of view, does this give me enough data to kind of keep myself on task and make sure I don't get too far off of, compatibility between parts. If you're in a group of 2 or 3 people, I'm going to look at it through that lens. Does this break it up into enough pieces where each individual person can kind of keep themselves on task, where at the end, it's almost like if you, I think about like a documentary like it's called The Channel, the tunnel that goes under the water between England and France, London and Paris, right? If you read the documentary, these teams started, one in Paris and one in London. And they just hoped they hit as they were going. So, there was a possibility that somewhere they would have passed each other up. And I think in the end, you looked like you had seen it, maybe.
I just know of the tunnel.
Okay. Yeah, I think they were like less than 2 inches off. Yeah, I mean, it was shocking how accurate they were. But it's that type of thing where if you have more than one person working on a project, you have to pay special attention to your connecting points. Kind of make sense? So when you're writing these things, when you're doing your requirements document, you're doing your specifications document, I want you to really think about the goal of the document rather than let's throw together some super formal blah, blah, blah for Lippmann because that's what will get me the best grade. What will get you the best grade is a document that does its job. Does that make sense? Regardless of what its format is. What?
So in the specifications document, do you actually does it have to be so instructive that you're putting code in there to say
I would say, generally speaking, you wouldn't use code.
Okay.
If anything, you would, in a specifications document, you might use pseudocode, but for me, I prefer bulleted list. Okay. I like bulleted list type stuff, personally, so that when you glance at it, it's speaking English to you. It's a human talking to a human. Okay, then you're using your expertise to code it if it's a program, that type of thing. Okay, but again, really focus on what the purpose of that document is. Okay, a lot of when I had a software engineering class, the teacher would take off points for if you had a weird relationship between 2 ER diagram things, and it just seems stupid to me. I get it. I get the formality of it and things like that. But these documents have a purpose, and nobody really cares if your document has the perfect ER diagram or even has a diagram at all. Maybe diagrams make sense for your project. Maybe they don't. Maybe the thing that makes the most sense is rather than going out and finding a tool that allows you to kind of visually create it, maybe it's a hand drawing. Maybe that's what allows you to describe your project the best. That's fine. Don't not do that because you don't think it's formal enough. The document has a purpose, okay, and that purpose is far more important than the format. That make sense? Okay. So when I look at these, I'm looking at them through that lens, the lens of the formality, the lens of what it's going to accomplish. So the requirements documents due a week from today. If you get it in early and you want to get started in your specifications document, you can go ahead and do that. I'm happy to look at it early, so if you submit it, and or since I'll grade it the first time, maybe what you want to do is if you are happy with what you've done, go ahead and submit it. But if you have some questions on it, maybe email me the document and just say, does this really hit the mark? I'm concerned about this. Don't ask me to pre-grade it before you grade it. But if you have targeted questions and you want me to look over your document before you submit it, I'm fine with that. Okay, I want you to do that because the more I see you looking at these documents as being important, the better. Okay, this isn't just busy work to get a grade. All right, so if you are halfway done with it now, or you can get me something by Thursday, I can look at it in class. If you want to bring it by me, that's fine. But I'm happy to look at it via email. You can swing by my office, whatever makes you happy. But remember, this document is for you and your client, not to make me happy. Make sense? Okay. Questions about any of that? Anything else about your project? I can look at your paper real quick if you'd like. We're good? All right. I will see everybody, at least on Thursday, but if you want to stop in before that, feel free. I'm around.